All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Obvious Leadership Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joey, and we got Omer on the line over here. So today, what we're going to talk about are 5 of the laws from the John Maxwell book, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership.
Welcome to the Obvious Leadership Podcast, where we dive into practical leadership insights that are, well, obvious. Your hosts have walked the talk, and now they're sharing their knowledge, strategies, and advice. Let's jump into today's episode and explore the world of leadership with your hosts, Joey and Omer.
Right? If you're the one holding your team back, then, unfortunately, you're the one that needs to change. You need to skill up, right? You need to get better.
Yeah, I could see that. So, because at the end of the day, right, if you're in an organization and say your leadership isn't the best, your skills aren't up there, you really think that the organization or leadership is looking at you and your team for advancement positions? Probably not. You're probably holding your team back somehow.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case, man. Like I said, like we have said before, I feel like that kind of runs into a problem of where you think leadership is just telling people what to do, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's definitely what leadership is not.
Yeah, you really have to be able to lead your team. And it's actually kind of funny because I think we were talking about this, right? As far as like that second law that you wanted to talk about, because you got to lead your team. And part of being able to lead them is being able to influence them to want to do more. And I'm not saying taking advantage of them. I'm not saying you are manipulating them, right, in a bad way. I'm saying you're motivating them to want to progress their careers, whether you're within your organization or somewhere else, right? And that's what the law of influence, right, Joey?
Right. Correct. So, just talking about the law of influence, if we take it a step further, we can say the law of inspiration, right? Instead of influence might be, it could be along the lines of taking advantage or, coercing somebody. But essentially, it's how much effect do you have on that other person that's on the other side of the line, right? How are you going to get them to basically see your point of view, and you all move forward together? I think that's what influence is in a couple sentences.
No, it really is, Joey, because if you can't help influence your team to want to perform, you're not leading them anywhere. Because by influencing, that means that they are receptive to what you're saying. You have those open lines of communication with your team, and they're open to what you have to say.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, I think that's definitely one of the laws of influence, right? They have to be receptive to what you're saying. Otherwise, you're just, a wasted bag of words at that point,
Yeah, just a bunch of hot air.
So, kind of talking about that, right? I feel like the other law that I wanted to talk about is the law of process. So okay. We've talked about it a little bit, but essentially kind of knowing where you are in a particular situation, because let's be real, leadership is basically trying to hit on a lot of cylinders at one time, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to do a lot of things at once. There's a lot of things that are on our table, but you have to understand where you are in a particular process to make sure that you are giving the right attention to that process.
No, I get that. It kind of reminds me of, because I know we've talked about it before. It's kind of like it's like the 4 stages of knowing, right? The first stage is you don't know what you don't know. That second stage then becomes you know what you don't know. And as long as you focus on what you don't know, you can get better at it. And I think that third stage was something along the lines of you knowingly can do things when you focus on it. And that last stage is you can do something subconsciously, like you've been through the process, you've mastered, certain techniques, certain skill sets, and you don't have to actively think about it. It's just second nature and you do it, right? You've developed those processes to be able to get from point A to point C at the end, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely think it's important that you look at the different aspects. It could be KPIs if you want to, but there's a lot more things to focus on than just KPIs when you're a leader, right? But understanding that there are things out there that you don't know, right? Because sometimes, like maybe it's a solution to something of a problem that you're
Yeah.
having, right? And if you don't know what the solution is, you're at the you're I mean, you know that there's a problem, right? And so you might be in that second stage. You know what you don't know, right? And you're trying to get to that third stage. And but making sure that you are approaching things in a sense of, I guess, you want to be humble about it, right? You want to make sure that you're not, oh, I know everything, right? Because then you're going to kind of turn some people off, I feel.
No, and I think that actually goes back to like the law of influence, right? Because having your people be able to want to speak up to like say, hey, hey Joey, I think there's a better way we can do this, or you know what, I've actually come across this before, and this I was able to solve it, and it actually cut out a lot of like time and effort out because it jump started what I've done in the past, right? When you have that sphere of influence within your team, when they're receptive and open, that means they're also open to share their feedback, their best practices with you that can help create a launching pad for you instead of having to, we talked about in the past, right? Having to recreate the wheel when you have no reason to recreate the wheel at all, right?
I mean, a lot of times you find out that the answer's already out there. You just got to bring it out, right? And
Yeah.
and that's just like you're saying, create a sphere of influence. But I think that kind of ties into the next one that I wanted to talk about is the law of solid ground, right? So
Okay.
we think about that as kind of like a foundation, right? But I mean, that foundation can be made of a couple things, but I think most importantly, it needs to be an open foundation, meaning it's welcoming, it's warm, and it kind of welcomes those outside ideas and for people to be, conversing about what's important.
Kind of like having that, pretty much being an honest and, an honest leader, right? You
Yeah.
have integrity, you're leading with, your team's best intentions. You're not the corporate person, that is putting corporate in front of your team's well-being. I think that's what it means for me, right? Because at the end of the day, if you fall and, you say, well, that's what corporate wants, that's, the direction that corporate wants to go. It's like, all right, cool. So what are you doing as a leader to, voice what is actually in the best interest for not just the teams on the front lines, but their best interest is also typically what's in the best interest for the company.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, just from experience working in both large corporations and privately owned smaller corporations, those in the front lines are not the same as those who are in the corporate office. And what I mean by that is at the corporate offices, they are too far removed from what's actually happening on the day-to-day business because all they're looking at is just spreadsheets and numbers, and they don't truly grasp the effect that changes and policies that they make will actually have on the front lines until it's too late. And for larger organizations, that actually becomes a very detrimental thing that's done because it'll set the company back years, right? Compared to like whatever progression they've had in the previous decade.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit on something there for me, man. When you talk about the law of solid ground, I mean, and I'm picturing what does not solid ground look like, right? How does it feel to stand on something like that? And I think a lot of it weighs on if you don't have any integrity, then you don't necessarily have a clear point of view of what your action needs to be, right? As a leader, right?
Yeah.
Or people, right? So if they don't know where you're going with this, then they don't know where they're going with this. And, and they don't know where to go, right? They don't know who to follow. They don't know what to do. And
The
I
blind
feel
leading the blind, right?
yeah, that's the law of shaky ground right there. But so I think it definitely starts. It has a lot to do with integrity, man. I think that's very important.
Oh yeah, I definitely understand that. I think the other one that you want to talk about, like it kind of ties in, but I think this is more like for the individual, right? Your inner circle, your sphere of influence, those around you that you keep, right? Like they say, you are who you hang around with. So if you hang around with people that, are advancing in their career, you're going to find yourself wanting to advance in your career. If you find yourself with people that, don't give, two craps about what's going on, and they're okay with, not doing well, that's who you're going to be with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important that you definitely surround yourself with people that want to advance, right? And maybe it's not necessarily in the company, but they want to advance the way that they lead, right? And that like-minded mindset of, hey, look, we always must be taking a step forward, because if we're not taking a step forward, we might be taking a step, maybe sideways or backwards, right? And that's not the way we want to go. So I think it's important to have people around you to do that. I think that it goes hand in hand with networking. You know what I mean? Because kind of like we've talked about before, it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody within your company. It doesn't necessarily have to be that somebody that is, that you've worked with before, or however it is, like you need to find somebody maybe that kind of inspires you, right? And that you want to learn from them so that you can apply some of the things that have made them successful to where you are in your journey.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing. We've talked about it before, right? Being part of a larger community, being part of a tribe. When you're around other leaders that are actively becoming better or wanting to become better, you will see that you will also go in line with them as well. You will help each other out. You will point things out, not in a condescending way, but you're going to give yourself constructive feedback and also share tidbits of what's worked, what hasn't, shortcutting your way to success as a leader. And I'm going to throw out a little bit of tidbit because I know that, Joey and I have talked about doing something, and we have something that we're going to be coming out real soon. So keep an eye out when we start talking about that and start, putting out feelers for that, because we're going to open up a small window for people that are interested in something like that. But we'll talk about that, I think, a little bit later, right, Joey?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think it's very powerful what we're trying to do for people out there.
Yep. But yeah, no. So those are some of the topics, right, that we actually, or Joey, today's topics were something Joey wanted to really talk about. So pretty good about that. Feeling good about the topics. But no, guys, if you guys like today's episode, feel free to like, comment, let us know what you guys thought. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, right? Because that just helps us show us that, we're on the right path, talking about what you guys like to hear about and want to learn more about.
Yeah, so there's 21 laws, right? So if that's something y'all want to hear more about, if y'all want to open up a conversation about a particular law, man, let's have at it.
All right, guys. Want to thank you for stopping in and listening to another episode of the Obvious Podcast with us, or the Obvious Leadership Podcast.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Omer, for having us. We'll see y'all next time.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
And that brings us to the end of today's Obvious Leadership episode. Remember, every great leader starts with one step, and you're already on your way. Small changes lead to significant impact. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, and remember that leadership is the key to unlocking extraordinary results.